What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. I am your host, and my name is John. This week, we are back with episode 82, where we will be analyzing and predicting the UFC 244 pay-per-view headlined by Jorge Masvidal versus Nate Diaz. This 12-fight card will take place from New York City this Saturday night, with the first fights taking place at 6:30 p.m. on UFC Fight Pass and ESPN+. Then the prelims will start on ESPN2 at 8 p.m., which will feature 4 fights. Then the main card starting at the typical pay-per-view time at 10 p.m. on ESPN Plus or the streaming service of your choice. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce my guest at this time. Haven't had a guest on in a long time. He was on episode 28 way back in August of 2018 for the UFC 227 card. Here we are about 17 pay-per-views later, and my man Ozzy is back to join me. What's up, Ozzy?
Hey, Ozzy P here. Happy to be on. Glad that you were so gracious I actually reached out, to get on. Was super excited about this card. Going to be actually attending it as it's in New York, and I wanted to, get my thoughts out there in audio and, show the enthusiasm that I have for this card, share it with others.
Yeah, it's awesome that you're going to the card. It'll, kind of give us a unique feel to it. It's always special when you're going to that card, when you're analyzing the fights, and then you're going to see them going down in person. I know that you'll be there for the first fight, and you really should be, because top to bottom, this is a great card. You mentioned it earlier. It's something I kind of noticed but never really fully realized until now, is that there's not a single debuting fighter on the card. These are all fighters who have fought in the UFC multiple times before, and they are known to the fans. They're known to the betting lines, and we got some great odds. Not too many heavy favorites in this card. Any guy could win all these fights. And with that being said, we're going to start things off with the first fight of the evening, which will take place in the featherweight division. We have Julio Arce, who is 16-3, taking on Arce-Dawodu, who is 10-1. The opening betting lines for this fight were Dawodu, the -165 favorite, to Arce, the +125 dog. Right now, we are seeing over on 5 Dimes Dawodu -130, Arce +110. So two-way action coming in on this fight. A little more on Arce's way. So Ozzy, what do you think about the more action coming in on Arce's way?
So I'm actually pretty familiar with Arce, being a Northeast, resident, and doing jiu-jitsu and coming up fighting MMA before. I had a teammate who was actually in the Ring of Combat bantamweight division when Arce was super active there, and I studied him a little bit, broke down some fights, saw him in the Kelleher fights, and I agree with the early action, given the holes in Dawodu's game, or what we haven't seen. So Arce, 19-fight veteran. He's proven that he can strike, he can grapple, and wrestle, and he can go on the ground with anybody at the highest level. With Dawodu, you haven't really seen too much of his grappling, or him tested with a guy who has like a 3D game like Arce has. His toughest fight was probably that Kyle Bochniak fight, and that ended up being a pretty tight fight. So I think the guy who has the more depth of skills overall in the broad sense is Arce, but Dawodu has some really clean kickboxing, and I think has the athletic advantage over Arce. But I'm curious to see if Arce would be able to implement his plan. I feel Dawodu is a lot like the Peter Pettis. I don't know how to pronounce his name too well. Not that he's that much like him, but the style is something that Arce has seen in the past. So I'm curious to see if he's going to be able to crack the code and give Dawodu his second loss of his career.
Yeah, interesting point you mentioned about him being a New York guy. A lot of Tiger Schulman's guys on these cards, you're probably familiar with a lot of them. And I agree that it seems like Arce has the more tools of the two. I think that this fight will mostly be a kickboxing match, where I think Dawodu will have a bit of a power advantage, although it'll be really competitive because both are really gifted kickboxers. It's going to be some really good exchanges on the feet between the two of them. But I think Arce has the potential to maybe mix in his grappling of some sort. He has really creative back takes from all different angles. You know, he hit one off of the cage versus Shaman Moraes when he was pretty hurt in that fight. So he's got a lot of fight in him. He looked pretty good in his last fight versus Arosa, getting that head kick knockout. And Dawodu looked great in his last fight, getting that head kick knockout over Hori. Both looked really good. But the one thing, Dawodu struggled a bit early in that fight. He got dropped by Hori a little bit in the first 2 rounds. I think just the first round. I think he took over from then on out and really started pouring it on Hori, just really beating the shit out of him in round 3, honestly. It seemed like he threw about 50 strikes and like 48 of them landed. It was just a really prolonged beatdown. So hopefully that doesn't happen here. I think this one will likely go to the distance, and I think that Dawodu will probably land the harder, cleaner strikes on the feet in this one. And I think that Arce might be a little undersized, and I don't think he'll get this fight to the floor. Maybe that possible back take will come in and sway this fight Arce's way, and he'll be able to swing the rounds with his grappling. But in a pure striking match, I think I got to go with the more technical and powerful guy, and that's Dawodu. So I'm going to go with Dawodu as a 29-28 decision as my official pick.
I'm going to come the other way. I'm going to pick Arce here in this situation. I think he's going to be able to, get into clinch battles with Dawodu and get him to the ground often enough to, maybe find a finish later in the fight. But I think he's going to do enough to win it on the judges' scorecards. But definitely a fight that is a good start, good opener for this card. I think it'll be action-packed.
Yeah, would not be mad at all to see Arce pull off the win. I think I like his overall game a little bit more than Dawodu's. And I mean, for a first fight, that's really as good as it's going to get in the UFC. So moving on to the second fight of the evening in the welterweight division, we have Lyman Good, who is 20-5, taking on Chance Rencountre, who is 14-3. The opening betting line for this one was Good, the -120 favorite, Rencountre, the -120 favorite, a pick 'em. And right now, the line is Good -120, Rencountre +100. So the early action actually came in on Good's way. He was around the -145, 150 favorite at the steepest he was. Now that action is coming back on Rencountre. And we mentioned this fight a little bit earlier off the air, so I will swing this over to Ozzy. So what's your take on this fight?
I think that we're getting pretty good odds here on Good, actually. I know that the narrative is that he can't defend a shot. He's, a bad grappler. He gets taken down. But if you look at the guys that, I think the thing that stands out the most in people's heads is when he was on The Ultimate Fighter. A lot of people thought, hey, Good's on The Ultimate Fighter. He's coming from Bellator, or I think he had already finished his Bellator stint, and he's going to, dominate, run through everybody. He gets taken out in the fight to get into the house by a wrestler. I forget his name, a guy that I thought was going to be good, but nothing ever came of it, and he just kept getting taken down and got grinded to bits. But if you look, he's coming off a loss to Damian Maia. Chance Rencountre is not Damian Maia. I don't, if you look back at his last fight against Nardiev, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Nardiev was lighting him up on the feet, and Chance, even on the takedowns that he was getting, or when he was locking the body on him, it was, incredibly difficult for him. I think he was really fortunate a few times to get that fight to the ground. And Nardiev, it was his UFC debut. I think he shot his load. He blew his wad, and he wasn't able to put up enough defense. And in that other fight that Rencountre had, he had Kyle Stewart, Kyle Stewart's not a UFC level guy. He's out. He's never going to fight again in the UFC. I think Good can, counteract the physicality that Rencountre often has in a lot of his fights, that advantage that he has. And I think he can bust them up on the feet, hitting them to the body, to the head, defend enough takedowns, and end up, I think he's going to stop Rencountre. Would I be surprised if, Good tired out and Rencountre was able to get on top often enough? No. But at -125, I did put a bet in on Good. I think Rencountre is just too green on the feet. I saw an interview of him that he was saying that he wanted to test his striking with Good because he thinks that he's as good, no pun intended, as a lot of guys, in the UFC in the top 15. I think he's in for rude awakening. I think Good is, training. He's training with a good camp. He's going to come ready, and it's a hometown fight for him. He's an instructor there, right down there, maybe 10 blocks away from where from MSG, and I think he's going to pick up a win here. But what are your thoughts? I think you're on the other side here.
Yeah, I'm actually going to pick Chance in this fight. I think I'm a little more impressed with his wrestling than you were, because Nardiev came into the UFC on short notice versus Prazeres and showed like incredible takedown defense. I mean, Prazeres was a 4-1 favorite in that fight. He was on a 7-fight winning streak, and Nardiev showed really great defensive grappling, really great get-ups, ability to get off his back, stay off his back, and I was super impressed with him in that fight. He won that fight. And then coming into the Rencountre fight, he's another he flipped. He is the -500 favorite now. And then Rencountre put on a crazy performance versus him. He got some early takedowns. He did land some hard strikes on the feet, like you said. The first 2 minutes, Nardiev was really taking it to him, landing some good strikes. But, Rencountre showed that he can take a shot in that period, I think. And he persevered through that. He ended up getting the takedown. He held Nardiev down that entire rest of the round. Might have stolen the round back, but you probably gave that round to Nardiev because of the damage. But there was a back take, I think, involved in that round too. So a really close round. And then Rencountre takes him down round 2, holds him down the entire time. And this was a guy who I was raving about his get-ups, and he couldn't get off his back the entire round. Round 3, Nardiev is still making bad choices, throwing flying knees, kicks, getting taken down, and gets dominated for really the whole fight. So, I mean, I was really just blown out of the water by that performance. Even I think Nardiev still had some gas in him at the end of the fight. I mean, he ended the fight with a takedown, and he was really just shut down skill for skill, I think. And, I mean, Good is a great fighter. I think that you were saying that there's a narrative that he's a poor defensive grappler. I think that I would disagree that he's a poor defensive grappler. I mean, like you said, getting tapped out by Demian Maia is no skin off your back, but he just didn't show good things in that fight, in my opinion. I mean, he got backed up to the cage right away versus Maia. The first 15 seconds, he got single-legged. He was really aggressive trying to get back up to his feet. He wasn't using good technique. He kind of panicked on bottom. He got his back taken, and he didn't – I mean, I guess he hung in there for a little bit before getting choked out. But, I mean, he just – what you can't do against Maia, and he did what you weren't supposed to do, back up to the cage. And he did not do the right things defensive grappling-wise. And I think that Rencountre could put him in some bad spots on the ground. I think that he will land the takedowns. He could probably land takedowns in all 3 rounds. I don't think he'll submit Good. Not the same submission ability of Maia, and when tapping out Kyle Stewart with the rear naked choke, like you said, is nothing to really brag about. So I think the Rencountre just grinds this fight out from top position. I think that a lot of people are pointing to the Bilal Muhammad loss from Rencountre, but he took that fight on very short notice. I think 10 days short notice, and did not have a good performance in that fight. Did not show good striking skills. I do agree with you that Good would be the better striker at range. If the fight stays at range and Good's able to get takedowns, I probably do think he stops him, like you said. But I just don't think he will stop those takedowns. Junior college national champion, as we were mentioning before. Chance Rencountre's got really high grappling accolades, and I think he's going to show them off here. And I think he's actually going to win 30-27. So that'll be my pick for this one.
Yeah, I think I mixed up the order of what the of Nardiev's UFC fight. So yeah, he had the Prazeres fight. The thing is though that the Prazeres and Rencountre, like both of them want to grapple with you and take you down and all that, but it's just so different. Like the difference is so vast when you're talking about grappling on how you defend or which style works against the guy and which style doesn't. I feel like Chance, he's a real opportunistic grappler. Like, there were a few positions where Nardiev would go for like, a big reversal or a big move, and Rencountre would, just kind of snake his way up and finish takedowns. I think against Good, he's not going to be able to get those authoritative, sticks to the mat that he's going to need to keep Good on the ground. And I think that Good's just going to be able to scramble out. But, I think it's a back and forth fight. Obviously, the odds are tight there. And it's one where I could see either guy winning. But Good is my pick, and I did bet him at -125.
Nice, yeah. So me coming in the other way, I got 2 units on rank counter around like plus 108, and I think now he's actually coming down to even money. So it looks like I got in at the right time, but maybe the price is getting even better for you. You might add more. With that being said, we're going to move on to the next fight, which will be in the women's bantamweight division. Women's flyweight division. Excuse me. We have Katlyn Chookagian, who is 12-2, taking on Jennifer Maia, who is 17-5-1. The opening betting line for this fight was Chookagian minus 140, Maia plus 100. Right now, we are seeing Chookagian minus 155, Maia plus 135. So a little more action coming in Chook's way. Another hometown New York fighter. What are you thinking about this matchup, Ozzy?
So these are two girls that both, have consistently picked up wins in the UFC and have consistently shown that they're, two of the better female fighters. I like Chookagian in this spot, based on the fact, just what you're going to get with Chookagian. A lot of grunts, a lot of straight punches, a lot of kicks to all levels. But I think she's a fighter that only loses to girls that can aggressively cut her off or aggressively attack her. And Jennifer Maia, her 2 wins in the UFC are against 2 of the least fleet of foot fighters I think we'll ever see grace the octagon, and Alexis Davis and Roxanne Modafferi. I think she's in for a pretty big shock at how much faster Chookagian is going to be than both those 2 ladies and her as well. With Chookagian, though, it's tough to trust her because she doesn't, really have much finishing ability. Always goes to decision and doesn't really throw a lot of heat on her shots. But I think she's the more cerebral fighter. I think she's the fighter that is able to dictate how a fight, like the tempo and the momentum of a fight. And I feel like she's going to outsmart Maia there on in this fight. Maybe what I would love to see from Chookagian is her use her grappling offensively more. I don't think she doesn't go for enough takedowns. I'd be curious if you could tell me if she's ever attempted takedown, or if what's her average per fight. But if she could use that, she trains at the Renzo Gracie Academy. A lot of the Danaher guys. I think her fiance or boyfriend is like a former Olympic level wrestler. Like he was on the Olympic or the world scene for the United States, and she doesn't use the wrestling enough. I think she's going to be able to pot shot Maia enough, maybe bust her up with some kicks, and be able to take this on the judges' scorecard. Can never be too sure, but maybe a 29-28 decision for Chookagian is what she's used to, what we're all used to, and what I think is going to be coming on Saturday.
So I think Chookagian has actually shot for some takedowns before. She did it versus Irene Aldana, but she went 0 for 11 in that fight, and which is something I really did not expect. And but we're in complete agreement in this one about Chookagian just being the better striker, the better overall mixed martial artist. This one should go to the decision. It should be a Chookagian scorecard. Even though she does tend to make her fights a little closer than they have to be, I would like to see her up the output. I would like to see her sit down on her shots a little bit more. Like you were saying, I think she'll have a pretty massive striking advantage in this one. As you mentioned, Maia's she did look good in her past few wins. She did look like she was improving. Her boxing seemed to be getting a little bit better. But versus Alexis Davis and Roxanne Modafferi, no disrespect to those women, but not the same level of fighter that Chookagian is. Meanwhile, Chookagian is actually beating some of probably the B tier level flyweights. Some of the best flyweights that the UFC has to offer, other than Shevchenko. So. I think we're in agreement here. I don't think we'll see any offensive wrestling. I think Maia may actually be the one shooting, but I think she will be unsuccessful. I think the fight stays standing. Chookagian uses her patent range finders, like her jab, her tennis sounds, and her kicks to her side kicks, turning side kicks. I don't even know what I'm rambling on about right now, but Chookagian by decision is the pick. We're in agreement with this one.
And for those, now Chookagian, I think she opened, I think you mentioned, like kind of close to, it was like even or minus 120 or so, at minus 155 or minus 160, where it's kind of trending now. That's a good amount to lay, I would probably look at just trying to bet the Chook-Maia game by decision, which you can get now at -120. I don't really see her finishing here, but if I was to bet a fight, bet the fight, that's where I would go. Please do not bet the over. People love parlaying the female overs. It's just not a good idea. It's at -570 now. Don't do that. Crazy things can happen, but yeah, those are my thoughts on the fight. It's probably the fight that I'm least excited about, but maybe that I'll go to the bathroom for that one.
Yeah, I think that the value is pretty good on Chook-Maia as well. I think she probably wins this fight more like 7 times out of 10, more compared to 6s, where -155 kind of implicates. So yeah, it's a pretty good value bet for Chook-Maia. And yeah, the over is always usually safe, but like you said, not at that kind of chalk. So with that being said, we'll move on to the next fight in the heavyweight division. We got Andre Arlovski, who is 28-18, taking on Tavares-Shahbazyan, who is 8-0. The opening betting line for this one was Rozenstruik, the favorite, at -170 to Arlovski, the +130 underdog. Right now, we are seeing Rozenstruik -155 to Arlovski +135. So two-way action coming in on this fight. The line's kind of staying just about the same of where it opened up at. What are you thinking about this fight, Ozzy?
So I'm unapologetically a sucker to bet on Andre Arlovski in his fights. Like, he's always, I think he's been the underdog in God knows how many fights in a row. I remember the Sakai fight, his last fight, where it was with decision. I think I bet on him there. Hit him when he was going against Ben Rothwell. In this fight, though, I just don't see how I could back Rozenstruik. I've met Andre Arlovski in person. I just can't see myself backing a guy who is, 8-0 in the UFC. I think he's gone to one decision in his career, and the only other fight where it went outside of the first round was that Junior Albini fight. And, Albini got him to the ground in the first round, and I think was just a little too passive on a few occasions. Andre Arlovski is a bona fide killer. He could be in a John Wick movie. He's the kind of guy that you want money on. I feel, he's a little chinny for sure. And I think that's the only thing that bites him here potentially, if Rozenstruik could connect. But Arlovski hasn't been knocked out in a few years. Last person to knock him out was I don't remember the Walt Harris fight. I think he might. But did he get knocked out in that Walt Harris fight?
No, that was a decision. I think he got knocked out 3 times in a row by Stipe, Ngannou, and Overeem.
Yeah, so he last got knocked out by Francis. Like, I'm sorry. This guy might look like Francis, but he's not Francis. I can't. As funny as that sounds, I just can't back Rozenstruik in this position. I think all the values on Arlovski. I was wondering if maybe the line would climb up a little bit more, but I'm definitely going to be putting down something on Arlovski here. I just can't see how I would not. How do you feel about this? Are you on the Rozenstruik train, or do you like Arlovski here?
So I'm agreeing with everything you say. Again, the Arlovski train is at the station, and I'm hopping on board, putting 2 units on him at +135. I really like him in this fight. Everything you said was on point about Rozenstruik. I mean, he seems like a pretty decent fighter. Besides the fact that his ground game is really weak, I think that he could probably beat a bunch of heavyweights, but Arlovski is not one of them. Arlovski is a really bad matchup for him. I think Arlovski mentioned something about Rozenstruik greasing in one of his Japan fights. So that could indicate that he's looking to take this fight to the floor, because I think that even though Arlovski hasn't done that in forever, I mean, the last time he shot an offensive takedown was probably like years ago. Maybe he can catch a kick from time to time and get a takedown, but he's been grappling for 25 years, and Rozenstruik is a legitimate white belt off of his back. I mean, he was able to get up from Albini's positions, but Albini had him in some bad spots. And I think if Arlovski puts him on his back, he will probably just submit him with a Kimura or something really basic. But I think this fight actually will stay on the feet, where Arlovski will be pretty content to just outbox Rozenstruik. I mean, Rozenstruik's kind of a low output power striker, and he was able to land those knockout shots on Albini after Albini gassed out trying to wrestle, and he was able to knock out Alan Crowder early, and he was able to beat some competition outside of the UFC. But he really has not shown anything in his MMA career that makes me believe that he should be a favorite over Andrei Arlovski. I think that Arlovski should not only be the favorite in this fight, I think that when the fight is all said and done, he will look like the -2, -300 favorite in this one. So really favoring Arlovski in this one. I think that he probably gets it done by decision. I mean, I think his past 8 or so fights have gone to the decision. I tweeted this out earlier too. Arlovski has been the underdog in 16 of his past 17 fights, and if you bet 1 unit on him every single time, you'd be up 3 units right now. So until that 3 units runs out, just keep betting Arlovski as that underdog. It's a winning formula so far, and Arlovski by decision is the pick.
So I full agreement. I mean, I'm looking at also Arlovski inside the distance is almost plus 500. If he can start tiring out Rozenstruik, like there's no way Rozenstruik has 3 rounds of cardio. I don't see it. If in a fight with Andrei Arlovski, I think Arlovski could wear him out and potentially finish him. But at plus 135, you just want to bet it straight. I think there's plenty of value there. Fade those long KO hype beasts. So we'll get into another one later on in the card. But love doing that when they face their first guy who's a really competent high level guy, which Andrei Arlovski has proven to always be, and don't see that changing.
Yeah, I forgot to even really mention the Rothwell fight. I mean, Andrei Arlovski looked better than he has in years in that Ben Rothwell fight. I mean, he threw more volume than ever. He was busting Rothwell up. I'm pretty sure he won the fight 30-27. It was a miracle that Rothwell made it to the decision in that one. And I agree that plus 550 is really good value because I think he could knock him out on the feet from like a prolonged striking attack, maybe a TKO in the later rounds, or he could possibly get that submission like I was talking about earlier. So yeah, good tip about the Arlovski inside the distance. I'll definitely have to add a little bit to that. But with that being said, moving on to the next fight in the middleweight division, we have Brad Tavares, who is 17-5, taking on Edmund Shahbazyan, who is undefeated at 10-0. The opening betting line for this one was Shahbazyan as the favorite at -245 to Tavares, the +175 underdog. Right now, line margins have tightened up. We are now seeing Shahbazyan -150, Tavares, the +130 underdog. So what are you thinking about this matchup, Ozzy?
It's an interesting fight, man. This is one of the fights that I'm really interested to see. Shahbazyan, I wasn't too much of a believer when he first came out, and obviously we saw his brother lose on Dana White Contender Series, but when he when he smoked his last 2 fights, when he just smoked Bird and smoked Marshman, and now given those guys aren't UFC staples, but they're solid fighters. We saw that Darren Stewart fight, which is what I wanted to see from Shahbazyan. A fight where it wasn't always going his way. Like, does he crack? I think he's honestly something special. He has a lot of skill in a lot of areas, and he's just super dynamic. Like he in transitions, he's just money. When he's against the fence, he's looking for strikes, he's looking for takedowns. And Tavares, he hasn't been very active. His last fight, obviously he lost to champion Adesanya, but just looked real plodding, slow. Like sometimes you see a guy when he's morphing into a journeyman or like a gatekeeper. And I think this is kind of the transition phase in Tavares' career. Obviously, he can very well prove me wrong. His last 2 losses are to Adesanya, the current champ, Whitaker, the former champ. So Shahbazyan has his work cut out for him for sure here. But I think he's shown me enough that I think that he's going to be able to get Tavares into some grappling exchanges and exploit the weaknesses that I think Tavares has always maintained in his career, where he's competent on the ground, but he's susceptible to the big move. He's susceptible to giving up a submission, giving up a big positional, like a big positional change. And I think Shahbazyan is going to be all over him, and that at a certain point overwhelm him or put him in positions where it makes it very clear that the rounds are Shahbazyan's. I think this fight, I think Shahbazyan actually gets a finish here. But, it's a toss-up because Tavares is a guy who's incredibly hard to finish. But I'm, going out on a limb there a little bit, picking Shahbazyan to win by finish. But I just think his tools are super sharp. He has a good game plan when he goes in there, and he's able to adjust on the fly. And that's what I like seeing in a young fighter. And I kind of treat this almost as I'm investing in a stock of a fighter. And I think Shahbazyan has a high ceiling, and I think it's something that's going to come to fruition. So I'm backing him right now. Obviously, you could have got a great price on him a little earlier in the week, or kind of when the lines first came out. But I think he gets it done here. I don't know. How do you feel though? Do you share the same height and same opinion of Shahbazyan, or are you a little skeptical still?
I'm impressed by him. I think I would say that I don't think he's still totally proven himself. Because he is facing a huge step up in competition here. It's going to be a really big test for him. And one point you mentioned, you said you could get a better price on Shahbazyan earlier in the week. Oh, that's right. Well, he was like minus 120, right, or something like that. But
yeah, his line was like, it was ping ponging because I think there was a lot of Tavares money at the, Tavares is like plus 175, plus 180, and I think some people really banged that on multiple bucks. So yeah.
Yeah, and then some late action came back on Shahbazyan as of the past few days. Yeah, so I think Shahbazyan has shown a vast array of skills, but he has 2 quick finishes, well, including his Tuesday Night Contender Series fight, 3 quick finishes over Marshman Bird and whoever the guy he fought on the Contender Series was. I just don't think he really showed that much in those wins. I mean, he shows that he's an incredible athlete. He has a lot of power. He comes out super aggressive in the first couple of minutes. And I think that that's his best win condition in this fight. I think that if he comes out and blitzes Tavares, I can see him landing a couple good strikes and then Tavares maybe shelling up and not having an answer for it. But if Shahbazyan chooses to offensive wrestle like he did versus Darren Stewart, I think that he won't have much success. And I was really impressed with Tavares' defensive grappling, his takedown defense, his get-ups, his balance, everything was really good. The Jocko fight, he was able to stuff all the takedowns of Jocko, neutralize him in the clinch, start outstriking Jocko. And Jocko just looked terrible in that fight. I mean, it could have been Jocko, it could have been Tavares just shutting down his game, and then Tavares getting the late finish in that one. And then the Elias Theodorou fight, not the highest level wrestler, but Elias was shooting some good shots in that fight, and Tavares had great takedown defense the entire fight. I mean, the fight ended with him defending a takedown, and he looked, fresh as a daisy. He looked like he keep going, which is weird because you mentioned he looked flat and bad overall versus Israel Adesanya. Could have been Israel Adesanya shutting him down, the future champion, just having a big mismatch skill-wise. I also heard some rumors that Tavares like a broken foot or something like that going into that fight, and it really would explain it because I think that was one of his worst performances ever. So I can see Shahbazyan getting an early finish in this one if he really comes out aggressive and looks to swarm Tavares on the feet. But if he starts shooting takedowns, I think it's actually going to go the other way for him. And I think the longer this fight goes, the more it will favor the more experienced guy and the more technical guy in Tavares. But short term, I think Shahbazyan has the athleticism, the aggression, and the power to get an early finish in this one. So it's really tough fight to call. I don't think I would be laying any chalk at minus 150 where the fight is. I get if you came in on Shahbazyan at minus 130, minus 120, I can see that being a good price, but I think that the plus money on Tavares right now is looking pretty good. I think that I like his chances at stuffing takedowns, avoiding that early storm, and probably losing round 1 and then coming back and winning rounds 2 and 3 to get the 29-28 decision for Tavares.
Yeah, for those guys at home, live betting and stuff. So, just something to note. Tavares Hawaiian, tough as nails. If you see, him survive like a first round flurry or maybe be super defensive, where Shahbazyan's really laying on him, but something that's still a 10-9 round, look for Tavares at plus money at like plus 200, plus 250. Maybe catching Shahbazyan, as he tires later on to the fight, because that's the way I see it playing out. If Tavares were to win, I see him losing the first round, and then gassing or weathering the storm, and allowing Shahbazyan to come down and then taking over the fight late.
Yeah, I like that opinion a lot. And I mean, you probably will get a better price on Tavares after round one if he survives. So maybe I don't think I bet Tavares money line yet. And I think that that's a really good point. And hopefully I'll remember what you just said for the past 2 days. Sometimes when the fight gets close, you forget what you've been saying all week and you force the bet anyway. But hopefully I'll hold off on Tavares, because I think he likely does lose round one or lose the fight in round one completely. So very good point about that one. So we'll move on to the next fight, which is in the featherweight division. We got Shane Burgos, who is 12-1, taking on Makwan-Amirkhani, who is 15-3. The opening betting line for this one was Burgos, the favorite, at -185 to Amirkhani at +145. Right now, the more action coming in on the favorite Burgos, pushing him down to -245. Makwan-Amirkhani is now sitting at +205 as the underdog. So what are you thinking about even more action coming in as on the pretty heavy favorite Burgos in this one?
Oh, man, I really like Burgos in this matchup. I bet him. I was able to get him on Bet Online at -170. I bet that to win 2 units, so 3.4 units. And I think that's obviously an amazing price considering where the line moved. I was going to be able to get -155, but missed that one. But getting more into the fight, very familiar with Burgos. He and I actually, in an old school grapples class, maybe when I was 19, 18, and he was maybe 20, 21, he was starting up his MMA career. We met up in the semifinals of a no-gi tournament match, and went into overtime. I think he got the ref's decision after overtime had finished, but definitely close, fun fight. I think I might have it, but Burgos has been training MMA his whole life. He's a guy who I think is more versed than people think he is. A lot of people think that he's just kind of like a wild boxer or a guy who's strictly stand up, but even though he's had, I think, a few reactions that people have called into question, on the takedown and in the wrestling, I just don't really see Makwan-Amirkhani being the guy to overwhelm him on the ground or get him in those positions. Makwan, he had his most recent fight with Chris Fishgold, and I did bet him, and I did really like him there because I didn't think Fishgold was going to be able to out grapple him, but he had a real hard time in the first round against Fishgold, and I think Burgos is a fighter that if you don't get to him early, he has amazing cardio. He has incredible attributes for the division. He's fast. He has long arms. He has a real lanky frame. You could tell he's strong. And I really don't see the tools that Makwan is going to be able to implement or traditionally uses, how it's going to be enough against Burgos. He's going to have to hope for, a takedown, scramble, back take, where either he can finish Burgos, I feel, or keep him on the ground there. But on the feet, I really think Burgos is going to outclass him. He throws those strikes from all, incredibly diverse set of angles, and he's able to tactically pick apart his opponents. He goes to the body amazingly, and I think it's something that Makwan has not encountered in his career. And it's I think I see him as a guy who he's really good as a hammer, but when he's a nail, he starts to become a little timid. I saw Arnold Allen really take it to him, which was a split decision, which I really disagreed with. I thought Arnold Allen blew him out there. But Allen started just beating him in some of those grappling exchanges where he just wanted it more late in those fights. Same thing with Jason Knight, who's a bare knuckle fighting superstar now. Makwan went to a split decision with Jason Knight. Shane Burgos would wipe Jason Knight off this planet, and Makwan had a real hard time with him there. And Jason Knight, who's traditionally a guy who's easy to put on the ground, he'll go kicking and screaming, but he's pretty easy to go on the ground. Burgos too much on the feet, too much on the ground, too much in the wrestling and the attribute realm as well. I think he is able to win this fight pretty comfortably. And I bet him obviously at -170. I think there's some value to in his KO line, which is at 3-1, and I think he has his way of Amirkhani here, and he finishes him at some point.
Yeah, I really agree with almost everything you said. I think maybe the inside the distance could be a little bit safer because even though he's mostly going to be a knockout threat, I could see like a club and sub or a situation like what happened. I guess it's more unlikely with Hollowbach where he just snatches a crazy submission out of nowhere because he is very versatile. As you mentioned, he has a lot of layers to his game. He's actually probably one of the most well-rounded guys coming out of Tiger Schulman. And on the feet, I think that he's going to blow Amirkhani out of the water. That was a great point about the fight that he had with Jason Knight. He struggled in that fight. He got dropped a couple times by Jason Knight, who, I mean, he's a decent puncher, as we're seeing in the bare knuckle superstar fights, selling out arenas in Florida. Jason Knight does have some decent boxing, but Amirkhani should have been able to deal with him on the feet, and he wasn't because Amirkhani's defense on the feet is just not very good. I mean, even versus Fishgold, it was pretty sloppy, and I did bet Amirkhani in that fight, I think by submission as well, because I really thought that he's the better grappler. And I think Amirkhani is like a European wrestling champion or something like that, like a Finnish champion. I'm sure the level of competition isn't that high, but he does come from a wrestling background. He does have some pretty good scrambles in him, and he does have the cardio to grapple for 15 minutes. And Burgos is really gifted on the feet. I'd say his his area with the most weaknesses would probably be the ground, although he does have really good takedown defense. I mean, I think he's been taken down twice in the UFC, and he stuffed 34 takedowns. So he's got incredible takedown defense. He's stuffed more than 10 takedowns in multiple. I mean, Charles Rosa, he stuffed 7 takedowns or 6 takedowns. He stuffed 12 versus Pepe. He stuffed 12 versus Trattora. So he has the takedown defense and the defensive grappling, the cardio to stuff takedowns all fight long if he needs to. And I think that that's what he does here. But I agree with you. I think that he's going to stuff these takedowns and they're going to be on the feet. And Burgos is going to be butchering him on the feet. I think he eventually lands some hard punches and eventually drops Amirkhani at some point. I see the knockout more likely than the sub, although I think the inside the distance line would be pretty safe just in case some crazy sub happens because Burgos does have some slick jiu-jitsu. So the pick is going to be Burgos. I think he gets it done by knockout. Let's go with in the second round. And no bets on him so far, but might end up on the inside the distance.
Yeah. I mean, I think just Burgos. This is Burgos' fight to lose. He's originally from the Bronx, same here, so Bronx represent. But he's gonna win this fight. Like I just really don't see in his career arc. Like this is a guy who was undefeated as an amateur, lost that fight to Cater, which was one of my favorite fights ever to watch, honestly. And Cater, obviously, you see he's only lost to I think. Moicano since, so this is a Burgos fight. I see Mac win. I don't think he's really that serious of a fighter. I think he likes to run around with the girls and use the fame and stuff. I think Burgos is a future title contender or top 5 guy if he ever figures out how to implement a little more defense there. So Burgos for both of us. So we could go to the next fight that I'm very in anticipation for.
Yeah, I mean, as far as prelim fights, this is as good as it gets, and you can tell a pay-per-view is good when the last fight on the prelims is a banger, because that means they had so many stacked fights on the main card that they had to put one of the crazy good fights on the prelims.
They didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah, they're overflowing. So with that being said, we got in the light heavyweight division, Corey Anderson, who is 12-4, taking on Johnny Walker, who is 17-3. The opening betting line for this one was Walker, the -195 favorite, to Anderson at +155. Right now, we are seeing the more action come in on the underdog. Right now, we are seeing Walker -150, Anderson +130. So, Ozzy, I got to know what you're thinking about this matchup.
Oh, no, I want you to go first on this one.
All right.
I want to hear your head.
So early on in the week, I was thinking that prevailing wisdom says that Corey Anderson will use his huge wrestling advantage, use his likely cardio advantage, grind this fight out, get the takedowns. He's got the most takedowns in light heavyweight history, and he should win this fight with his grappling advantage. And you can change a few things about that last quote, but you can insert Serkinov's name into that and rewind 6 months ago, and I was saying the same shit about Serkinov. I thought Serkinov was going to use his grappling advantage, get him down, sub him. It was going to be a nice win for the veteran, and he eats a flying knee to the dome 30 seconds in, and that's a wrap. And Johnny Walker's career has been pretty weird in the UFC so far. I mean, his 3 UFC fights lasted a total of 4 or 5 minutes, I think. He's gotten 2 sub 30-second KOs over Ledet and Serkinov. The Ledet one was a complete spinny meme knockout. I mean, that thing was no MMA knockout. It was just some, who knows what that was. But the flying knee was terrific. I mean, he timed it. He feinted. He timed Serkinov, and he placed the knee super accurately. And I think that really to discover what Johnny Walker's about, you got to go back to his fight on the Tuesday Night Contender Series versus Luis Henrique. And Henrique is not the greatest level fighter, highest level fighter by any means, but he tested him in that fight. He attempted a lot of takedowns, and he pushed Walker, and Walker showed that he has the ability to stuff takedowns. He has the ability to fight past the 2-3 minute mark. He has knockout ability in all the rounds. He's still throwing flying knees. And in his cardio in round 3, I mean, he picked Luis Henrique up and ran him across the octagon like Matt Hughes did to Frank Trigg a decade ago. In the 3rd round, I mean, he had a lot of cardio in that fight, and it answered a lot of questions for me. I forgot all about this fight. So while I was leaning Anderson a little bit earlier in the week, I was impressed with his last fight versus Latifi. He looked very improved in that fight. I mean, he got caught with some big shots early. He lost round 1, but I think he showed a little bit of an improved ability to take a shot. He ate some punches from Latifi and kept fighting. He kind of sprawled and brawled that entire fight, just stuffed all Latifi's shots, and he's more prone to offensive wrestling, like guys like Glover Teixeira, who he landed 7 takedowns against, Pat Cummins, 12 takedown attempts. So he's out wrestling high-level grapplers in those guys. But, I mean, there's just this aura about Johnny Walker, and I've lost money on the guy, versus Serkinov, and I think I'm at the point now where I'm done doubting Johnny Walker. I'm recognizing that this guy is some weird, inhumane fighter that has been sent to the UFC by Brazil, and I just can't pick against the guy again. I think that we're talking about Anderson, who's a guy who's not had the best fight IQ at times. He's been knocked out a few times before, and he's been knocked out in fights that he was winning convincingly. Rewind to OSP in the same very building 2 years ago. So might have some flashbacks. We might see Anderson in control, and then that flying knee will land. I just think that Walker has the defensive grappling to not get finished. Obviously, Anderson's not a big finisher, and he's going to be dangerous all throughout this fight. He's going to have 3 chances at the beginning of all 3 rounds to land that knockout blow, and I'm picking Walker to land the knockout shot. I mean, it's not a lot of analysis or tape to back this up. It's kind of an out on the limb pick, but I'm trusting Johnny Walker to get his, I think, 4th knockout in a row here, and I think he probably gets it done in the 1st round. And let's go with another flying knee from Walker. So I said a lot about it, Ozzy. You're probably frothing at the mouth to get your opinion out. The floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I hear everything you're saying, but Johnny Walker's minus 150 over Corey Anderson. Literally, I mean, I think this line is insane. It's cuckoo crazy. It's amazing how much they're disrespecting Corey Anderson with this line. Johnny Walker, I went back to look at his fight before the Contender Series. He fought a guy named Czech Cone. So it's not Czech Congo. Okay. This guy is 17-10 from a tiny country in Africa. He's lost his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fights, and he took Johnny Walker down. This guy's a 185er. This guy's someone who lost to John Phillips. John Phillips, the 185er that's in the UFC that just got his first win. That lost to Jack Marshman. That lost to Charles Byrd. He lost to him. and he took down Johnny Walker and held him down for a little bit. Once Corey Anderson if Johnny Walker does not knock Corey Anderson out in less than 2.5 to 3 minutes, I just don't see how he's going to win this fight. Corey Anderson trains with a great camp with Almeida and Mark Henry. They know he's been there forever. They know how Corey Anderson operates. They know how to avoid those big shots. I don't think he's going to come out and allow Walker to use those, his flying knees, his head kicks, his elbows. I think literally Johnny Walker's his best path to victory, I feel, is if he kind of defends a shot, they get against the fence, and he elbows Corey Anderson's head in while Corey Anderson is in on a double or single leg. But there's no way that Corey Anderson's not going to take Walker down. Walker, I saw, and I know the New York MMA scene and jiu-jitsu and the training scene. I saw, Walker running up stairs, doing sprints in the hallways of the hotel. I mean, I think he's a guy who he's not taking this seriously yet. If you're doing stuff like that, he's training. The people he's finishing his camp with are not UFC level training partners or coaches. I just feel that he's just not ready for the stage. Corey Anderson's a top, lockdown top 10 guy in the UFC light heavyweight division. You could say he has bad fight IQ, but I think he fights within himself pretty often. The most disappointed I've ever been with him was that OSP fight where he was winning it going away. Like I had like $500 on him, and I was there as well because this was the last time he was in MSG for the Bisping St. Pierre fight, and he was dominating in that fight. He was avoiding the big strikes. He was fighting intelligently, and then he got flatlined by a kick at the end of the third round. So that could happen here. But Corey Anderson at plus 135 here, like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a guy who always outperforms his expectations. I don't think he's in a choke here. I think this is he puts Johnny Walker down, and I really don't see this being any like this. I don't see Johnny Walker getting up. Maybe in the first round if he gets down pretty quickly, but otherwise, I think Corey Anderson's able to ride him from like that turtle position, tire him out, and eventually, get the finish on him. I legitimately think he can finish Johnny Walker here. I put a big bet on Corey Anderson. I'm backing him. I understand the hype behind Walker, and sometimes feeling like, look, this guy he just knocks people out. He's got the aura around him, but I have to go with the guy who I know is tested, I know is proven, and I can't give up like such a stylistic advantage there with Corey Anderson's ground game, and thinking that Walker is going to be able to flatline him before he's able to get that done. So I'm big on the Corey Anderson side. Bet him, tipped it out. I think he gets this done for us, and you'll know quickly, I feel, if that fight's gonna go our way. But yeah, this is the most intriguing bet wise and just stylistically wise. I think this might be the most interesting fight of the night for me, and my night will depend if I'm profitable or not. Will definitely depend on if Corey's able to get this down and start pounding Walker out, because Walker doesn't have the reactions of a UFC level guy in those grappling exchanges. And I think those grappling exchanges they're going to happen. I really think they are. So Cirkunov is not the grinding wrestler that Corey is. Corey gets every person down that he grapples with. He is an elite top 5 wrestler in, I'm not going to say in MMA, but he's up there in terms of MMA wrestling. And I just don't feel Johnny Walker's ever stood across from that in the UFC, or probably even in training. I think Walker's training in Russia with some Sambo guys and stuff, and that's good, but I don't think he's ready for Anderson's game here.
Yeah, I think, like you said, that's definitely the more logical opinion about the fight. I just have a feeling that Anderson's gonna wait a little too long, and he's gonna let Walker get a little loose in there. And I agree that Walker, it seems like he doesn't take this too seriously. I mean, the dude got injured celebrating from his last fight, but I think that kind of plays in his favor a little bit. I mean, he just goes out there and fights in such an unorthodox manner, and I think he can catch opponents off guard, and he can make the more experienced, more seasoned guy look like the weaker fighter in there, just because he does some crazy athletic shit. So I'm sure that this fight will be decided in the first 90 seconds or so. Whether we see if Anderson gets Walker down, he probably will run away with the fight. But I think that, like I said before, I think that he does land that miracle knockout blow. But we've said enough about this matchup. It's definitely, I think, the most intriguing, fascinating matchup of the card, and that's still in the prelim. So we got to keep it rolling and throw the main card. First fight in the main card is in the lightweight division. We got Kevin Lee, who is 17-5, taking on Gregor Gillespie, who is undefeated at 13-0. The opening betting line for this one was, searching for it here, Gregor Gillespie as the -130 favorite to Kevin Lee as the -110 slight underdog. Right now, we are seeing Gillespie -155 to Lee at +135. So what are your thoughts about the more action coming in on the favorite Gregor Gillespie in this one, Ozzy?
And another incredibly fascinating fight. I hear so many differing opinions from guys that I respect. I see some guys who, they're seeing Kevin Lee at that +150 or +155 number, and they're like, man, I can't, in a fight like this, like Kevin Lee, he's, fought amazing competition. Yeah, he's come up short, but he's a physical machine. He wrestles well. He has great attributes that he utilizes on the feet, right? Nice kicks, a good jab, a good right hand to follow it. And on the ground, if he's able to get on top of you, as you saw in like that Edson Barboza fight, even against Ferguson, he's a killer on top. He's good with his ground and pound. He passes guard really, really well. He's one of the best guard passers into back takes that we have in the sport. But with a guy like Gregor Gillespie, for someone like Kevin Lee, I feel Gregor Gillespie's like the boogeyman. He's a better wrestler. He's an amazing gas tank. If you follow Gregor Gillespie on Instagram, you see this guy's going on like 50-mile bike rides or something. He's doing crazy runs on the treadmill where he shows you his times. It's absurd, the conditioning that this guy has, and he shows it. He's one of those guys where it translates to the octagon. He is nonstop action. He's shooting takedowns, throwing punches, beating you up, looking for the submissions at all points. And I feel like Kevin Lee's, this is a really difficult. The UFC is doing Kevin Lee no favors here. In that Dos Anjos fight, you saw Kevin Lee start to tire from a guy who was just nonstop on him and grinding, and that's how the fight's going to be against Gillespie. I don't see Kevin Lee having enough power in his hands to keep Gillespie back. Gillespie moves his head, a bit. He has good in and out movement. So I think for Lee, it's going to have to be conserving energy early. Keeping that jab out there and trying to be opportunistic in some of these wrestling scrambles and try and catch Gillespie. But that's going to be a tough task. That's easier said than done. I don't really have a big opinion on this one side or the other. I said earlier on in the week that if Gillespie got to 150 or under, I think I'd back him. But I have some hesitations here because I saw Gillespie against that fight against Sidney Outlaw on the regionals, and Outlaw is another like big guy who he could fight at 170 if he wanted to, but fights at 155, and he was he tired Gregor out, and he got the better of some grappling exchanges. And I feel if Lee gets into some of those positions, Gregor's going to have a hard time getting him off his back. But what do you feel, before we get to maybe a little more in depth or picking aside, what are your thoughts on this? Because I'm at a crossroads here with between this fight, because the value at 150 I feel was on Lee, but now it's more of a gambling, if you will, right?
Yeah, I personally want to bet Gregor as well because I think that Kevin Lee's best attribute is his offensive wrestling, and I think that, or offensive grappling in general, and that heavily relies on his offensive takedowns. And I just think that that will be neutralized here by Gregor Gillespie, and it's going to be hard for Kevin Lee to get in a swing of this fight without his takedowns. I mean, he really relies on them. I think most of his fights that he has won, he scored offensive takedowns in, and in that fight versus RDA, he that was at 170. I will give him credit for that, but he just looked very mediocre in that fight. He got taken down in rounds 1, 2, and 3 by RDA, and RDA is a terrific grappler, but I mean, Gillespie's got way better takedowns than him. And he gassed out later in that fight. He spent a lot of time in the clinch just searching for takedowns and getting stuffed by RDA. He had no answer for the Kimura trap, the Kimura of RDA whenever he was using it to stuff the takedowns. And he was just unable to get his game going, and he eventually got tapped out in the 4th round. This fight definitely favors Kevin Lee, the fact that it's 3 rounds, because Kevin Lee's got pretty bad cardio notoriously. I mean, he had good cardio in like one of his fights versus Barboza, the full 5 rounds, but the weight fluctuation kind of worries me. I mean, he fought in December, 5 rounds versus Iquinta, a decent fight, but he lost it clearly. And then he goes up to 70, then has the hard fight there, and now all of a sudden he's moving right back down to 55. I mean, the toll it's got to take on his body to make this weight. I mean, he likely has trouble making the weight again. He could possibly miss weight. We'll find out tomorrow morning, but I think that this fight heavily favors Gregor Gillespie. It could be a tough round 1 because Kevin Lee's going to be really fresh in round 1. He comes out really aggressive. He could possibly reverse a takedown, scramble out of a takedown attempt, and get a back take. I think that's his best shot here, is reversing an early takedown of Gillespie and getting a back take where he's probably the most dangerous of anywhere in the fight. And I don't think that the chances of that are happening are high. I think that the chances of actually Lee maybe landing a hard strike on the feet and some crazy brawling exchange between the two is more likely, and hurting Gillespie from there. Because one thing about Gillespie is on the feet, he's a bit of a defensive liability. He kind of just throws defense to the wind and trades punches sometimes. This guy's a savage, but he can take a shot. He took some really good shots against Jason Gonzalez and some other fighters throughout the period of his UFC career. His hardest fight has actually been against Franca a few years back. I mean, Franca tested him, landed some hard shots, stuffed a few of his takedowns, got up from bottom a few times, but Gillespie was able to overcome that adversity, find a way to make his wrestling work, get the top position, hold top position, and then dominate Franca for the rest of the fight after a little shaky of a round 1. But Gillespie's just gotten way better his past few fights. I mean, he's improving a lot fight to fight, and I really wanted to lock in that bet on Gillespie. It's just the one thing that stopped me was Gillespie's last fight against Yancy Medeiros. And Medeiros is a pretty solid fighter. He trains with a very good camp and has a good jiu-jitsu background. But if Gregor Gillespie was able to, he was attempting to take Yancy down for the first maybe 6-7 minutes of that fight, and Yancy actually did a pretty good job defending the takedowns. I mean, he was able to stay on his feet a lot. He was able to scramble back to his feet once he was taken down. He was able to get out of some bad spots on the ground, and eventually Gillespie was able to get him down and get top position and pound him out with ground and pound, and eventually forced a corner stoppage after round 2. But it took a lot for Gillespie to get him down, and if Yancy Medeiros was able to do that, I have a feeling that Gillespie could struggle getting top position and implementing his game versus Lee. So I think that eventually it wears down on Lee. Lee might have a good round 1. He might start round 2 well, but that it's just going to wear on him, that constant grinding pace. Gillespie's never going to stop looking for the takedown. I don't think Lee will have any distance, and I think that eventually Gillespie starts landing those takedowns, using his top position, passing guard. I mean, as you mentioned, one of the best guard passers in the sport. I mean, both of these guys are great guard passers. They both have great finishing ability, and I don't think that Gillespie gets the finish. I think he likely loses round 1 versus Lee, and then runs away with rounds 2 and 3, getting his top game going and landing that ground and pound for the 29-28 decision. But man, what an intriguing matchup. It's going to be a hard one to bet, because I think during that first round, it's going to be a little bit bit of a sweat for Gillespie, and we might even get a better price on Gillespie after round 1. So, or we could see Gillespie just come out right away, start landing takedowns, and look like a big favorite in round 1. It's really a risky fight. So, what's your official prediction for this one, Ozzy?
I'm conflicted here. I think that Lee has something to prove. He's got a chip on his shoulder, but I'm going to pick Gregor here. What I think will be evident here in a Gregor victory is that the transitions, that is where Lee is weak at. Lee has all the talent and all the moves, but the interconnection of all those of his game is where he's lacking, and where I think it makes it evident that he's not an elite fighter. And you'll see Gregor beat him in these wrestling transitions, and it'll show you what an elite fighter looks like in some of these grappling exchanges, where I think it is the most evident, where you see who's a world-class guy and who's not. I think he sticks Kevin Lee a few times here in this fight, and I think he starts running away with it as the fight goes. So Gregor's gonna be my official pick. I'm hoping that that price keeps going under 150, but I really don't think it'll get there. And I don't think I'll have a bet on this, but I'm very, very interested in seeing it play out.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, some heavy action is coming on Lee the past day. Like today, I mean, he was minus 185 yesterday, and now he's minus 155. So you might see him drop under 155 there at some point. And yeah, you mentioned the scrambles. That's what really was going to come down to. We're going to see the difference between a good, maybe even great MMA grappler and an elite level NCAA 4-time champion, All-American wrestler. It's going to be great. The scrambles in this fight are going to be amazing. But wish we could talk about it more. Got to keep the ball rolling. Not too much analysis in this next fight, hopefully. In the heavyweight division, we got Derek Lewis, who is 21-7, taking on Blagoy-Ivanov, who is 18-2. The opening betting line for this one was Ivanov, the underdog, actually at plus 130. Lewis, the minus 170 favorite. The line has since flipped. We're now seeing Ivanov minus 115 to Lewis minus 105. So, man, this fight is actually pretty much a pick 'em now for the past few days. I guess I'll start things off in this one. And I just think that Lewis is a really overrated fighter. I mean, he's mostly notorious for losing fights and then coming back and landing a knockout blow. And, of course, he's always the threat for that. I mean, the dude is incredibly tough. He's durable, and he hits extremely hard and can always be that knockout threat. But his last fight versus Junior Dos Santos, he was able to land a few good punches, but he got hurt to the body real bad in that one. He got rocked with some punches. He got finished in the second round. He just didn't look in good shape. And I'm tired of hearing rumors about Lewis's back and how Lewis's rehab is going. I mean, the guy has notorious back problems. He had a knee problem the past few years. I mean, there's the medical excuses go on and on about Lewis. I just don't think he's that good of a fighter. He doesn't have very much technique to his game. And I mean, he has heavy hands, as I mentioned, and he's got some sneaky fast head kicks. I'll give that to him. But on the other side, we got Ivanov, who is a low output, very technical boxer. But I think that he's going to lull Lewis into a low output boxing fight, which is where Ivanov specializes. And he's going to beat Ivanov in the way that he always does. He's going to outbox him. He's going to land the better strikes. It's going to be a boring fight, in my opinion. It's going to be like Ivanov landing 50 strikes to Lewis's 25 or something like that. But I think the rounds will be fairly clear, like Tai Tuivasa. I mean, we saw Tuivasa get overvalued in that fight, and Ivanov put on a clinic. He looked like a minus 200 favorite out there. Ivanov's just got the experience. He's got the cardio, the technique. I think he keeps the fight standing, avoids the knockout blow of Lewis, and outboxes him on the way to a 30-27 decision. What are you thinking about this one, Ozzy?
So, I mean, I agree. Ivanov is going to be my pick here. It's just such a hilarious. I mean, Derek Lewis is in just the funniest fights. So you never know what's going to transpire in them. But yeah, I would think that Ivanov just, stays more busy, outlands him on the feet, and mixes it up. Ivanov goes good to the body well. He combos his attacks. Derek Lewis is, I'll give Lewis credit. I did see a picture of him or a video of him in like the face-offs, and he's looking more trim. So I am curious to see the weigh-ins tomorrow to see if he comes in at under 265 pounds, like significantly under, maybe like 255, 260. But I mean, mean, at a pick'em price, you have to side with Ivanov in this fight. He's only lost to Junior Dos Santos in his UFC debut, and he just has a more depth of skill on the feet. I feel that Lewis can always land that kill shot, but in a fight like this, I have to side with Ivanov. Maybe if you want to back Lewis, you back him. Maybe Lewis in the first round, which is plus 400, which is, I think a decent price. But, if you're going to bet the money line or touch it, I'm personally not touching it. Heavyweights, especially at these odds, it's just like tossing the coin up in the air. But Ivanov is for sure going to be my pick. But I don't have too much technical analysis here. I feel that Ivanov just works his way inside and just starts throwing at Lewis, and Lewis gets a little timid when you start throwing a lot of shots at him. He starts like shying away, turning away, running away, and I think that could happen often. And like you said, it could turn into a real boring fight.
Yeah, I have not made a bet on Ivanov, even though I did sound pretty confident in him. There's just a lot of variability, and I've been burnt before on Lewis. I mean, versus Volkov, he was winning 14 minutes and 30 seconds of that fight before he gets knocked out. So brutal memories about that one. Might not want to even have the possibility of revisiting that, but the pick is Ivanov. But we're going to move on to some better fights, and we got in the welterweight division, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who is 14-4-1, taking on Vicente Luque, who is 17-6-1. This fight opened up Thompson as the minus 135 favorite to Luque minus 105. Right now, we are seeing Luque actually the slight favorite at minus 115 to Thompson at minus 105. So I think this is the first time that Luque has been the favorite over Thompson, as far as I know. But that's a very interesting line. I'm curious as to what your thoughts on this one is. I'll let you start this one off first.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I lost. I think I lost you for a second. But yeah, the Wonderboy Luque. I can't believe that Wonderboy is almost even money here. I bet Thompson at minus 121. I think earlier in the week on Bet Online, and I see this as a fight where it's a stylistic matchup where I think. I don't see Luque really able to get his offense going too much. Thompson is a fighter where, you really need to be, have quick feet. You need to be able to be someone who, and Luque does check off a lot of boxes. He's good with his kicks. He throws good leg kicks. He has like good hooks, right? He has a patented left hook that he throws on the counter. But I feel that there's such a big speed advantage for Wonderboy here that Luque is a little too linear in his attacks. He's really going to have to chop away at Wonderboy's legs for him to be effective here, I feel. And I think Wonderboy is still he's still there. He still has the skills to implement the style that he did earlier in his career that got him all those UFC wins. So I'm definitely on the Wonderboy side. I think he's able to string together a lot of those straight punch combos on Luque. Luque is a guy who just puts his hands up. He has like a high guard, which I think leaves him susceptible to those spinning kicks. And I've been on the receiving end on quite a few spinning kicks. Shout out to Leo Muniz, Leo the Mexicutioner Muniz. I've been on the receiving end on a lot of them, and I know that you start shelling up and like looking down a little bit, and that's when that spinning hook kick comes to your head. That's when that spinning back kick hits you in the body, and you could get really hurt by those in those positions. So I think Wonderboy overwhelms them a lot with those shots, and eventually finds some big punches and kicks on the counter or when Luque is being real passive. How do you feel about this fight, though? I have to think that you're liking the Wonderboy side, especially at almost even money.
Yeah, I mean, shocking line. Considering that Luque, I believe, lost his last fight to Mike Perry. Well, it was an incredible fight. It was a really close fight. I mean, I think that rounds 1 and 2 were like 45 rounds in favor of Perry. I mean, he won them by a slim margin, but he won the rounds. He landed the more cleaner, harder shots, and I thought that Perry won that fight 2 rounds to 1. So considering that, and then we got Thompson coming off of a knockout loss where he was looking fabulous for the first 8 or 9 minutes versus Pettis, and then Pettis ended up landing that huge right hand knockout blow. So I think that's why we're seeing the line closer, because Luque snuck that line, snuck that win by, and then Thompson had that win kind of taken away by Pettis. So I think that I agree with you said about Thompson is he's still very competent as a fighter. He's still very skilled. His speed is there. His eyes are there. He still sees everything. He's got great awareness, fight IQ. He always had great takedown defense and ability to avoid the grappling. So I don't think that this fight will end up on the floor, although Luque should have a grappling advantage possibly. I mean, he's got a few nice submissions on his record, but I don't see this fight hitting the floor. It's going to be on the feet, and that's where Thompson shines. And I don't think that Luque will have an answer to get past the range of Thompson, the straight punches, the side kicks, some of the best karate and the best striking that the UFC's ever seen in Thompson. And I mean, this guy really is a treasure, a hidden treasure. And I think that he's going to be, that's going to be clear after he cashes in this fight. He's probably going to win 30-27. He's going to be super cautious, staying on the outside, using his range, and probably winning the rounds. And before he got knocked out versus Pettis, what I liked from him in that fight is he was throwing a lot more straight punches than usual. He had really good and just volume in general. He was throwing a lot more kicks. He had a little more urgency, a little more aggression than usual, and he was lighten Pettis up with straight punches. So I think he does the same thing here. I mean, Luque was struggling with the straight punches of Mike Perry, and he was struggling with the kicks of Perry as well. So I think that this fight is just a really great matchup for Wonder Boy. I also bet him, I think, at -122 on BetDSI or something like that. And now he's down to -105. So this is a situation where we might have to make it a 2 to 3 unit play on Wonder Boy. I think it's very deserving of it. And barring any crazy fluke knockout like the Pettis one, I mean, it was a great comeback victory from Pettis, but he was a 5 to 6 to 1 underdog at that time. So that's basically the definition of a fluke knockout, although how beautiful of a punch it was. So I think that barring any incident like that, I don't think it happens 2 times in a row to Wonder Boy. I think he stays safe, gets the decision victory in this one.
Yeah, same. I think so. We both bet it right around that same price at -105. You're getting an extra 3% of line value there, and just like you said, if Pettis had not landed that shot, which it was, Anthony Pettis finds those punches more than anyone else in the sport. But if he doesn't land that punch, he loses that fight convincingly. He might get 50-45, 50-44, and we see Wonder Boy here at over a 2 to 1 favorite, I feel, over Luque. And Luque I don't think he was offensively dynamic in that fight against Perry, and he really pulled out all the tricks in his bag. But the tricks in your bag, it does not matter against Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy's seen it all. He's fought everyone. And he's a guy that you need to be a guy where you're implementing new techniques, like you're learning, you're putting into effect things that you worked in camp. And I feel like Luque, he's a meat and potatoes guy. He shows up. This is what he reminds me of Glover Teixeira, but the modern version of Glover Teixeira, the much more athletic, throws more kicks and stuff. But he shows up, what he's going to do, his skill set, and he's going to show up for the fight, and he's going to throw everything at the kitchen sink at you. And if you can withstand, great. If you can't, then you're probably going down, or you're getting put on a highlight reel at some point with something that he lands on you with. But I don't see him adjusting very well. Wonder Boy's the most orthodox guy anybody would ever fight, and I just feel there's a lot of value on him at this line here. So I've already bet him. I'm going to bet him again now that line's at -105, and I think he makes it. He might have a scary moment or two, but I think he for sure wins this. I'd cap him closer, like to that 2 to 1 number that I mentioned earlier.
All right. So with that being said, we're going to move on to the co-main event of the evening. In this fight, we got in the middleweight division, Kelvin Gastelum, who is 16-4, taking on Darren Till, who is 17-2-1. The opening betting line for this one was Gastelum, the favorite, at -155 to Till as the slight underdog at +115. Right now, we are seeing some heavy action coming on Kelvin Gastelum. He's now minus 260 to Till at plus 220. And a lot of this action is actually coming in the past day. He was minus 200 yesterday around this time. Actually, minus 190 as around last night. All the way down to minus 260 now. Not sure what that's all about. I mean, I think it could be the speculation that Darren Till got a late start coming over to the fight for this one, and that's definitely a worry. I mean, the dude was on the plane today. They weigh in tomorrow morning, so he was probably getting his weight cut started while he was in the UK. But I mean, that flight, it's got to drain you. I mean, jet lag is real. If flying over from a different continent and then fighting 2 days later, that's fucked up. So I don't know. I guess that's why the action has come in on Gastelum these past few days. It seems like a bit of a narrative factor for me. I think we should just focus on the matchup in this one, and I think the matchup just favors Kelvin Gastelum in. But not at minus 260, first of all. I think that's a little too steep. And the one thing we should point out, this is Darren Till's debut at middleweight. He's moving up 15 pounds after facing 2 consecutive losses. In my opinion, 3 consecutive losses. I had Wonder Boy Thompson winning that fight versus Darren Till, and then Till got dropped and subbed by Woodley, and then he got knocked out cold by Masvidal last fight. So basically 3 losses in a row for Till, and nothing's really going right for him. He's looking for a solution, and I don't like when guys move weight classes after they suffered a knockout loss. And the 3 most recent examples that all happened this year were James Vick, Chris Weidman, and Luke Rockhold. Now, these guys were a little at the more end of their career. They both had some more knockout losses, and I think Till does still have more upside than all 3 of them. But those 3 guys, I think that they had a similar trait: is they all got knocked out. They all blamed it on the weight cut. They never fixed their defensive issues, and then they moved up in weight class expecting the extra weight to solve all their problems, and then they still get knocked out. So I think that's a very good possibility of what happens here, because Gastelum, he's going to have the power advantage, I believe, in this one, because Till hits hard for 70s, but I think Gastelum is much more suited for this weight class. I mean, it sounds kind of silly because he's going to be the smaller guy in there size-wise, but I mean, I think Gastelum is just a little more compact, and I mean, both of these guys should fight at welterweight. They just both really don't like cutting weight too much, and they fight at middleweight either way. So Gastelum's coming off that war versus Israel Adesanya. It might have been a career-changing war. I mean, he took an insane amount of damage in that 5th round. It could have been a 10-7 round, quite frankly, and it's going to be interesting to see how he comes back from that. But then on the other side, you got Darren Till, who got knocked out by a left hook. He got hit with 2 follow-up shots on the ground, and his head bounced off the canvas in front of 20,000 people in his hometown. So, I mean, his confidence has got to be shattered coming off of those knockouts. I mean, he just took the most damage anybody could possibly take in a knockout versus that Masvidal fight. So, I don't see much upside to Darren Till right now. I mean, the weight class, it's a big if factor. This thing about him coming to New York late, it's a big question mark. And just the matchup in general, I think that Gastelum is the better boxer. I think that if Darren Till wants to win this fight, he's going to have to stick behind that jab. He has the most success when he's pressuring you, when he's throwing a lot of jabs to set up his left hand. And if he jabs Gastelum a lot, he uses that reach and size advantage. He should outbox Gastelum, keep this fight at range, avoid the power punches of Gastelum, and win the decision. But if he has the same defensive problems that he did, like leaving his chin way up in the air, like he did versus Masvidal, I mean, he was getting counter-punched with some hard shots versus Masvidal before the knockout that led up to the knockout. So I just see Kelvin Gastelum finding a home for his punches. I don't think that there's any value left on the Gastelum at minus 260, but around minus 200, I think that there was value. I would cap him at around minus 200 for this fight. So I'm liking Gastelum. I think he gets the knockout in this one, although I wouldn't completely rely on it. I think we could just see him out-volume Till to a decision. But curious to hear what your thoughts on this one, Ozzy. What are you thinking about this one?
So another fight I love on this card, because it's just a great, it's just a super fun matchup that I honestly didn't see coming. So in this fight, changing weight, I have a lot of thoughts on this fight. Changing weight class is all the rage, right? You mentioned a few of those, you referenced a few of those guys who changed weight classes, didn't work out for them. Now, the only difference I feel here where, you know, it's notable is those guys fought real guys in that new weight class, right? James Vick fought Nico Price, Weidman fought Reyes, and Rocco Blachowicz. Till's not fighting a legit middleweight. Kelvin Gastelum is on, you know, he's had the most success at middleweight for sure, but he's not, you know, full blown middleweight where he has the power of a middleweight. That's first of all. But the reason I don't love this style matchup is because I like Till moving up to middleweight, because I thought at welterweight his biggest issue was the speed of that other guys had on him. Woodley, I noticed when he fought Woodley, I mentioned, I was like, wow, you know, Till looks like he's moving in slow motion out there. Like he can't hit Woodley. And, you know, that's a fight where he literally did not land a strike on Woodley, or maybe landed one. And, you know, he just got smoked and he was just too slow in that fight. And the same thing reared its head against Wonderboy, where he had to make it a really slow paced fight to be in it because Wonderboy is just so fast and he couldn't get to his offense. And then against Masvidal, kind of the same thing happened, you know, again. Now Masvidal, you know, snuck up on him, and obviously he used a lot of his tactical boxing advantages, but he also snuck up on Till there. And I feel like Gastelum has that same skill set. He's going to be able to get inside and land power on big power shots on Till. Now, that being said, at the price that this is at, you know, Till got or Gastelum got steamed. There is 100%, you know, made value there on Till, and at plus 220, you know, Till's the side. I think, you know, Gastelum is really open to a lot of shots. He's very accepting of getting hit because he knows he has such a good chin. But if you look at his fight against Jacare, he leaves his hands down, you know, very often. He doesn't really move his head off the center line. And Jacare, you know, finds his head every time when he throws a shot. And, you know, it's on the back foot, you know, when he's throwing shots in return, and it's on the front foot when he's, you know, admiring his work sometimes. And he really throws himself out there when he lands some of his shots, like his left cross or his left overhand. He really like throws his whole shoulder into it, similar to what Whitaker does at that weight. And I think that Till is really good. He's got that Muay Thai background where he's really good at fading back on shots and really like bobbing away and coming back really hard in return. So I think that Till is dangerous here. I think he's going to be able to land on Gastelum, and it's going to come down to, can Gastelum eat those shots, tire Till out, and take him into deep water and maybe, you know, mix in some takedowns, or is Till going to, you know, be the guy to stop Gastelum? And Gastelum has an iron chin, but I back Till at plus 180. For 2 units, and I think I have to add here at plus 220. So that's what I think about that. I know that was a mouth salad, but you know, I've really thought about this fight a lot. So what do you think about a few of those points?
Yeah, I'd say you definitely got to add at least one more unit to plus 220. I think that line comes down. I mean, you just got to really worry about the weight tomorrow. I mean, if the dude comes in overweight to 185, I mean, you're going to know that there's a real issue. So yeah, it kind of depends on that. I mean, if you already put in 2 at plus 180, I mean, it might be a little risky throwing 2 more at plus 220, because then if he misses weight or something, he might go up to plus 240 tomorrow. So who really knows? But yeah, I agree that the value side is Till now. Go ahead.
Another thing too, I got some inside information on, you know, what it took to take Till up there, and it was a big bet, but it was from one guy apparently who really liked Till. I mean, really liked Gastelum, and, you know, steamed it up. So I think I'm on the other side though. I think there's value on Till here. I think I'm going to pick him here because I think that he's going to be able to really land on Gastelum, and Gastelum is going to be overzealous in his attack. And there's some similarities between Till and Adesanya a little bit, you know, with a little bit of movement, lefty stance. You know, as much as Kelvin's you know, great stand-up fighter, he hasn't fought a lot of southpaws. So how, you know, what's the dynamic there with Gastelum trying to land that left hand that is always available to him when he's fighting a guy in the orthodox stance. But now that he's fighting a fellow southpaw, how does that look? How does he land that? So I think Till's going to be able to work his game here.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know about the whole one person pushing him all the way down. I mean, it's entirely possible, but I see a minus 210 to 260 drop. I mean, that's insane. I mean, it would have to be. I remember seeing something saying like that someone heard that Glover was hurt, and all these people were betting on this Russian sports book on Krylov, and then Glover looked great, and they all lost. So who really knows? But I won't question your inside information too much. I always like when people have some sort of tip like that. But moving on to the main event, we'll probably ramble on about this for a while, so we got to get this going. For the bad motherfucker title. So real quick, what do you think about the bad motherfucker title?
I mean, the BMF title, I mean, it's definitely a publicity stunt. I don't love it. I feel like, but I'm a hardcore fan, so I'm watching these fights no matter what. I guess, some people need, hey, this is a title. I just love seeing these two dudes fight. I don't really need them to fight for a title. If you can make all these fights like 5 rounds, like all these top 10 fights or so, I'd be down for that. So I mean, it's a cute thing. I hope that it doesn't continue on. I hope this is the last of it. After they give this belt away, they put it in a casket, literally, and we never hear of it again, and we don't get another one of these. But I go with it. I'm in support because it's just getting more people interested in it, and people love it, and it does make sense. It's fun. That's what I have to say about it. It's fun.
Yeah, I agree. It's all good fun. I mean, if any excuse to make more fights 5 rounds. I mean, I was saying this on my Twitter last week, is we need co-main events to be 5 rounds. I mean, we have 40 main events a year, but you have all these titles. You have all these titles, and you need title challengers, and you need to build these fighters up. We need more 5-round experience, and they have this paranoia of headlining cards without a title, and I don't think that was completely the case here. I don't think they made it just for that reason. They also made it because of the interview and whatnot, and I agree that I hope this doesn't stick around. I doubt it will, though. I mean, both these guys, they're very prideful fighters. They don't care about some play belt. It's cool that they're doing it. It's fun, like you said, but they're not going to go around praising that they have this fake title or anything like that. But, that is a little fun thing that we'll get to have here. But with the real quick intro to the fight, we got Jorge Masvidal, who is 34-13, taking on Nate Diaz, who is 20-11 in the welterweight division for the bad motherfucker title. And the opening betting line for this one was Masvidal minus 162. Oh no, excuse me, Masvidal minus 110 to Nate Diaz minus 110. Is that real? Right now we're seeing Masvidal minus 165 to Diaz plus 145. So I don't know how accurate that opening line was. That's what it says on it. 5 Dimes says Masvidal opened minus 190. So who knows where that book came from?
I think that might be the more accurate one.
Yeah, me too. I don't know where minus 110 came from. So you start things off in this one. I started with the co-main event. You start with this one. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, so fight between 2 dogs, just 2 guys who absolutely get in your face, great stand, active stand up. I think Masvidal, we're really seeing him come into his own here. He's moving up to 170, feeling really good, and performing in a way that I always, saw when he fought Askren. I knew, I'm like, I'm definitely betting Masvidal in that situation because this guy's just a killer. He doesn't stop fighting. He's a guy, contrary to Kevin Lee, he has all those intangibles, or the inner workings of those positions. And every position, he pays attention to the details, and that's what makes him great, because he's not overly a great jiu-jitsu fighter, but he knows the important things, and he sticks to them, and it's what allows him to get in positions to finish fights. In this fight against Nate, I think he's the better stand-up fighter. I think Nate needs to get him into a fight where there's a lot of transitional, portions of it, where Nate can maybe, gain ground in certain ways, where maybe he can get onto a front headlock, drag Masvidal to the ground, go to take his back, and then end up on top in some manner. I don't see how Diaz is going to have enough power to really shake Masvidal and keep Masvidal off of him. And I think Masvidal is going to, as the fight goes on, further take the lead in, just the amount of strikes that he's actually landing that are significant. And I think at the end of the day, that's what's going to win him the fight. And, my pick would be Masvidal, hoping that, maybe we could get some late money on Nate so I can jump on Masvidal for some action. Not going to be a big bet, but my pick is definitely going to be Masvidal. What are your feelings, though, between these two guys?
Wow, that was quick. I mean, I feel like we've been rambling on about some of these fights, and this one, I think this is the hardest one to predict of all of them because it's just a tough matchup. I mean, I really didn't have a good feel on this one until I really started doing tape today. I was hoping that no one was going to ask me about it because I started at the bottom of the cards. I learned who's going to win from the fight. I mean, I don't think about the main event until a few days before, so I really was just figuring this one out today. And my early lean was Masvidal I guess I would say the bigger guy at this weight class. I think he has definitely more power behind his strikes, and I think that he is definitely the more technical striker of the two overall. I mean, he's got the better kicking game for sure, and his boxing technique is a lot more traditional and a lot more powerful than Diaz's. Diaz's is kind of sloppy but effective. I mean, if you showed a boxer Diaz's boxing, I don't think that they'd be kind of grossed out. I mean, he doesn't do things very technically, but it works in MMA. It's really great for MMA. I mean, he uses it in the clinch a lot, that dirty boxing style. And meanwhile, Masvidal likes striking you from distance. He's got such accurate punches. I mean, this guy's one of the most accurate boxers in the UFC overall, maybe even in history. I mean, the way he was able to pinpoint those shots on Till not too long ago, it was just masterful. It was a great come from behind victory. He got knocked down earlier in that fight, found the range versus Till, started to find his shots at the end of round one, started really finding his range in round two, landed meaningful shots, and then knocking Till out in round two. Obviously, he had the 5-second knockout versus Askren. It was a great career moment. It's what catapulted this moment, but not too much in terms of analysis. Now let's talk about how Diaz has looked lately. And I think that he's only had one fight in 3 years versus Pettis, and it was a bit of a sloppy performance at first. I mean, the same thing. It took him a few minutes to get into the swing of the fight. It literally looked like he was shaking off the cobwebs. I mean, he was shaking at his arms. He was getting hit a little bit. He had to get back into the swing of things. But by the end of the round, I mean, he was taking Pettis down. He caught a kick, got a single leg past guard, took his back, and he was right back into it at the end of the round. He won the round. He won all 3 rounds convincingly. He dominated in the clinch. He had good knees and elbows from the clinch. His great cardio and pace like always, and he was hurting Pettis bad with knees in the 3rd round and almost got the finish. So it was a really good performance, a bit sloppy. I mean, Masvidal definitely looked a lot more polished in his win over Till, and he has the win over a Cowboy, Ellenberger. Those wins look great. He had really close fights, competitive fights, and not so competitive, but he hung in there versus Thompson and Maia. And excuse me if you hear the sirens in the background, the crazy streets of North Philadelphia popping off. But Masvidal definitely looks better of the two. And so getting down to how I think the fight's gonna play out, I think in the early rounds, Masvidal will have the success landing counter punches and landing kicks especially. I think he's going to target those oblique kicks, and he's going to be throwing that right body kick from the orthodox stance. Nate Diaz is the southpaw. Masvidal can fight from both stances, and I think he's going to choose that orthodox stance and be blasting kicks on Diaz, because everybody knows Diaz struggles with kicks. Everyone thought that Pettis was going to kick a lot more than he did. He just didn't have the space to, because Pettis was crowding him. Diaz was crowding him. He was getting inside of the clinch. He was wearing him down, and he was beating him that way. So I think that Masvidal will have a little more success at range. He will probably win rounds 1, possibly rounds 2 as well. But, man, the more I think about it, I think Diaz will find a way to adapt. He will find a way to make his cardio advantage work in favor of him. He will find a way to get that clinch going, to start wearing down on Masvidal. And I think that in the later rounds, we start to see Nate Diaz start to take over. I think we might see Nate Diaz win rounds 3, 4, and 5, or maybe Diaz wins rounds 2 and 3. Masvidal comes back for 4, and then it's 2-2 heading into the 5th, and then Diaz steals the 5th. I mean, realistically, Masvidal could win the scorecards as well, but if the fight goes to the decision, I favor the guy with the better cardio, the guy who has gone the 5 rounds a little more recently. I mean, it's not the best comparison. I mean, Masvidal has been scheduled for 5 rounds recently, but has not gone the full 5. The last time he did was versus Benson Henderson all the way back in 2015. And I mean, Diaz went with Conor in 2016, so not much better. But I think Diaz will win the later rounds. He will have more success. And the other possible outcome is Masvidal maybe landing some hard shots early and landing a knockout or TKO. I mean, we really could see a power difference from Masvidal in this one. I think he will be landing the counter punches. Diaz was a little hittable versus Pettis. I mean, he's always been a little defensive, lackadaisical in his defense. So I think that he will be there to be hit, and he could possibly get rocked from some shots from Masvidal. But I think it's more likely these two have a back and forth bloody war. It's going to be hard for Diaz to win rounds on the scorecards with his face all cut up and bloody like he always does, but I think he finds a way to do it. I think the official pick is going to be Diaz to pull off the 48-47 upset, and I really did not think this was going to happen until maybe a few hours ago. I mean, I just made this choice. I might flip-flop in the next couple of days if I watch a few more fights, but the pick as of now is Diaz to get the 48-47 decision. I don't think you mentioned an official prediction, Ozzy. You're on Masvidal, but how you got it getting it done.
And you made a really convincing case to go with Diaz there, because I mean, you know, I think I could see Diaz like just rallying in the end, but I'm going to go with the Masvidal pick. I think Masvidal. I keep predicting. You know what I'm really bad at? I'm always bad at predicting how a guy wins. I'm really bad at props. But you know, and I said a lot of times that guys will finish during this podcast. But I think Masvidal is going to hurt Nate quite a few times, and I'll just flat out pick a finish in the end of the 3rd round. Finish for Masvidal.
Nice, yeah. I mean, I think the knockout, it could be there. I mean, we could, with his counter-punching ability and the way Nate kind of goes into the pocket recklessly, we could see like a one-punch knockout possibly.
And Nate like ducks his head, tries to.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't make it. Yeah, he makes it a little easy to be hit at sometimes. And I mean, he's got a pretty iron chin. Only been knocked out once, but he got dropped a few times versus Conor, and he was there to be hit, and I think he will be there to be hit in this one. And he's really going to have to rely on his toughness and his grit like he always does to grind this fight out against the cage and in the later rounds. It's going to be a tough fight, and realistically, either guy could pull it off, and I'm really glad it's happening. Really great fight.
Same here. I'm two guys that I'm glad that they matched up together. I would have been pretty bummed to watch like Masvidal just fight Usman instead of Diaz. So I'm glad that they made the fight. They did the right thing there.
Yeah. So from top to bottom, I think I'll just run through my bets real quick. So far, I got 2 units Rencountre plus 108. We got 2 units Arlovski plus 130, and we also have 1 unit or actually 2 units Thompson minus 122, and I believe that is all for now. We are mentioned eyeing up Lee-Gillespie, maybe adding more to Thompson, and no bet on the main event for me. Passing on Ivanov for now, and maybe even adding to Tavares later. But you want to give a summary of your bets real quick? Or wait, the ones that you ones that you can mention, because
I mean, I'll just mention them all too. So I don't have the amount of units I bet on each of them, so I'll go. So I'm betting Good. I definitely back Good at minus 125. I'm gonna be down on Arlovski for 1.5, maybe 2 units. At plus 135. Burgos, I have 3.4 units for sure at minus 170. Anderson's a big bet. I'm not going to tell you how much, but that's a max bet. At those odds, I've got Wonder Boy, some at minus 121, and I'm going to take another bite at minus 105, and then I have some Till at plus 180, and we'll be adding a little bit at that plus 220 number, nothing for the main event there. And I think I'm mostly sticking on the straight bet. That's what I typically do. I don't really partake too much in the props. But yeah, those are going to be my bets there for the event. So I think we're on the same side for quite a few of those.
Yeah, good to disagree on a few just to get some discussion going, but for the most part, we are in sync. But yeah, just want to thank you real quick for coming on the podcast, my man. You're going to be attending this card live. You picked a great one to go to live. I hope the card delivers top to bottom on paper. You should be in for a great night. I mean, I think you could see some of the prelim fights even be crazy back and forth, entertaining fights, just like the main card fights. They'll have a little more stakes behind them on the pay-per-view portion. But I hope you enjoy the card. Hope it stays intact. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and just give a quick outro, shout yourself out a few more times, and then we'll wrap this up.
All right, yeah, thanks for having me. Of course, as always, definitely pumped for this weekend. Gonna be a wild one. We got some nice festivities going on after as well. So looking forward to a awesome night of fights first of all. And yeah, just follow me on Twitter. Best way. Trying to expand out. The people I'm on there with. So it's Ozzy_MMA. So at Ozzy_MMA, and shoot me a DM, anything. If you ever want to talk fights, always down to do so. So let's make some money this weekend.
Yep, thanks again for coming on. That has been Ozzy P. This has been episode 82. Hope everybody enjoys the card, and I will see you all next week. Peace.